Welcome to the Seeing Red podcast with Andi Turner and Garrett Fools, checking up on Texas policies and politics with some federal issues thrown in, like the assault weapons ban, interest rate hikes, you get it, but it's mostly Texas, since we can't ignore the big stuff either. And now, here are your hosts, Andi Turner and Garrett Fools.
Welcome back to the Seeing Red podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Fools. I got Andi Turner here with me, my lovely co-hosts. We are coming to you from sunny Texas, where it's still 90 degrees. We are still asking that you follow us on the social media. Our social media tags are The Seeing Red Pod, at The Seeing Red Pod on Twitter, or X, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. You can listen to us on YouTube if you'd like. If you're listening to us on the podcast app, fantastic. Follow us, like us, subscribe to us, comment if you will. Shoot us an email at hosts, that's plural, hosts at seeingredpodcast.com. You know, there's a lot of ways you can get into contact with us. A lot of you have reached out to us. I've gotten text messages and calls. Andi has as well. We are so thankful for just the overwhelming support we're feeling from folks. I haven't gotten any hate mail yet, so if you're hate listening to us, please feel free to drop us a line as well. We want to make sure we know the full wherever our whole fan base is sitting at. But we thank you so much for listening to us. We appreciate it. It's a lot of work we put into this for you guys, and today we're going to kind of just try something new. We're going to kind of just talk about the news that's just going on a little bit right now, because we're kind of in a dead period, right? The Paxton impeachment trial concluded a few weeks ago. We have the school choice special sessions set to start in a couple weeks. There's a lot of people moving around and no decisions really being made at any level. Just a lot of emotions being felt on Twitter, at events across the state. So we're going to kind of just talk about what's been happening in the interim, some interesting developments in the court cases that are moving along, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about school choice and about the session, about the primaries up in March. But Andi, kind of want to start off first. What did you see? What you were saying something happened. You saw something.
So a couple of things. But the major thing is this whole thing started when the Attorney General Ken Paxton went to the House and said, I have entered into a settlement with these people, and so you need to give me $3.3 million. So we go through the whole impeachment thing, and Ken Paxton is not convicted. And so here we are, like 2 weeks later, I guess, and the whistleblowers went to court this week, and said, hey, he's not making good on his agreements in the settlement, so the settlement should be set aside, and we would like to take this to court. And the court said,
I will interject here, because as a matter, I don't want, it kind of sounds a little disingenuous towards Paxton himself. In this case, Paxton presented the settlement to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives declined to include it in the appropriations for this biennium. And then the impeachment trial happened, and he wasn't done. The House has indicated that it's not going to take up the settlement, which means that there was a clause that said that the original settlement, that if the House didn't fund it, that it could be renewed. What's interesting about settlement talks, though, is settlement discussions and settlement agreements that don't come to fruition for whatever reason aren't admissible. So the court and the jury or whomever won't see or take into account any of the information that was negotiated during a settlement discussion. So that's interesting.
I think that's fair, though, because I've seen cases where settlements have happened because too much evidence, not enough evidence, didn't want to fight it, wasn't worth the money, whatever. I mean, so whatever the reason for the settlement should not be it should not be considered by a jury listening to the case.
But what's interesting is that the Supreme Court of Texas ruled that it wasn't going to take up the decision from the Court of Appeals that said that the trial should proceed, that it was a valid decision. So the trial will begin anew. The defense, Paxton's defense, will likely try to get it tossed on some other grounds now, but this was the major hurdle to clear. We're almost likely going to start seeing discovery in the next few months. But Paxton has a history of drawing things out instead of facing things head on, which is why his securities trial, which is set for February, was initially done 8 years ago. So Ken Paxton loves to drag things out.
So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, you're wrong.
So his SEC trial... So he's going to court on state-level charges right before we go to the primary.
Yeah, he's not up, though, so he doesn't have to worry about it. But we will be talking about Ken Paxton for the next 5 months because you're right, Andy. The Republican primary is set for the first Tuesday in March, and that will be what's often called Super Tuesday. So it's going to be an absolute cluster of a day because Donald Trump will be on the ballot in the campaigning, and you'll have DeSantis and whomever is still around. So we'll have that going on at the same time. We'll have millions of dollars. And Ken Paxton is a tried and true lieutenant of former President Trump, who's done a lot of legal work to try and help President Trump. So I can't imagine that President Trump won't get involved in any of these primaries that involve this. Also, let's not forget that Dan Patrick loves to say that he's like Donald Trump's man on the ground here in Texas. So the real concern, I think, that a lot of folks had was that Dan Patrick was going to call Donald Trump and say, hey, we need you to endorse this primary challenger and really make a primary out of it for this person, right? You're gonna be seeing that a lot. Dan Patrick is going to be trying to be the kingmaker of Texas over the next few months, and it's going to be interesting to see what sort of pushback there is from Texans. I mean, Dan Patrick's from Baltimore. Nothing against people from Maryland. One of my favorite people is from Maryland. But you know, Dan Patrick's been in Texas for about 40 years. He's probably earned his Texanness a little bit more than some in this conversation. Andi. She's giving me the Michigan salute, or the Maryland salute right now. But the that's the kind of bird you can't deep fry. So anyways, Dan Patrick's going to get involved in a lot of races. He's going to mess around with the House, and that's one of the things you're not typically supposed to do as a presiding officer of one of the Houses or not. But Dade Phelan and his crew are going to have to mount defenses, and it's going to be, we have 5 months until the primary, and this is going to be the nastiest campaign Texas has seen in at least 10 years, but probably it'll be the nastiest one we've ever had to deal with. You weren't here in 2014. 2014 was a bloodbath. Every single statewide office no incumbent was running for re-election, except for David Dewhurst, and it was an absolute bloodbath.
Yeah, and I have no doubt, Garrett, that that's exactly what's going to happen. I am concerned. My number one concern is to get more Republicans in seats, up and down the ballot. That is my main concern. And, you know, we've said that. I've said it. I've said it. But if we sit here and we're arguing amongst ourselves, we're not paying attention to gaining seats. We're worried about retribution for perceived whatever.
Well, we have
slights,
two groups of Republicans that are looking at each other and saying that's not a Republican. So it's like we want to get Republicans in seats, and both groups are looking at each other saying, "Oh, not this group, not that group. They're not real Republicans." And the problem is that neither group can win an election, even in Texas, without the help of the other. So we're gonna have to figure something out, because right now you're exactly right. We're just eating our own young at this point.
That's right. Fighting amongst ourselves is not the solution. And I'm looking at you, Chair Rinaldi, to stop this nonsense, to pull people together and go, look, I get it. You're angry, but we need Republicans in seats all the way, top ticket down to the bottom.
I can't tell you how many people have told me that they are scared to speak out against Paxton because there's no upside to speaking out. And that's what folks like from this West Texas cabal of oligarchic billionaires that are funding the kind of the worst rhetoric in the country about Republicans. Who needs Soros when you got Tim Dunn spending millions of dollars to just eviscerate Republicans up and down the ballot? But you have all this money coming in, and there's no reason to speak about what your thoughts are on Ken Paxton, because some people might agree with you, but more the people who are really upset or the people who are whatever, they're going to attack you. It's not that they're going to disagree; they will attack.
As a legislator,
as a person, as not necessarily a general run of the mill person, but as just a person who's involved in like a local Republican club or a Republican women's club.
It's so funny in Texas. We use that word rhino like nobody's business, and I have said this. Just I want to tattoo this down my arm or something.
Only rhinos get tattoos, Andi.
Yeah. Good luck with that hide. But anyway, a rhino is not somebody who disagrees with you about, let's say, the impeachment trial. Let's say about 2A. A rhino is that congressman that I was honored to take out of office, who was a registered a registered Republican, and voted 80-some% of the time with the Democrats in D.C. That's a rhino. Other people have different points of view, and they may be very passionate about it, but also respect. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. And just because you don't agree with it, or someone doesn't agree with it, doesn't mean that person is a bad person or a bad Republican. Okay.
Well, so, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more in depth, because I think on a philosophical level, people will listen to that and kind of generally agree. But let's put some rubber to the road on this, and I want to explain something I've been thinking about, right? In politics, there are a few different types of people, right? And this is kind of regardless of party, but I'm going to use the Republican Party in Texas as an example. You have your elected officials, and then you have like your public officials that are like really, really like well known. So we'll talk about maybe your Kevin Roberts, the former head of the TPPF. These are people who are very involved in Republican politics. They lead an organization and are the mouthpiece of an organization or of a lot of money, and they kind of like speak to it. You also have like somebody like Michael Quinn Sullivan, right? These are your more public figures in Texas politics, plus you're elected. So from Governor Abbott down to the House to even your county commissioners, sheriffs, things like that. So you have that kind of public figure realm of people. You also have your donor. You have this group of people that donate money to either, for a few different reasons. Primarily, it's either A, because they know the person, so kind of friendship or family. B, you have people who donate money because it helps their business interests. Maybe there's a candidate that's really big on bringing manufacturing back to Texas. You're a person who owns factories and wants to expand. You might support that candidate. And then you have folks who donate ideologically. This is typically your more small dollar, but also your mega donors as well, who are going to be donating because they want a specific type of legislation passed, usually on what's called a social issue. So these more things that are about vice or virtue or things that impact people on a social level as compared to a pocketbook level. So that's kind of your donor class. Then you have, and once again, this isn't a hierarchy. There's 5 equal groups.
Just groups.
The next group I'm going to talk about is operatives, and that's a group I've fit in most of my entire adult life, and that Andi fits into. But these are people who are professionally involved in politics. We make money. Our livelihoods or whatever else are dependent on our ability to help move the political football along, or in some cases, they'll block the political football from being pushed too far in a different direction. These are people who work on campaigns. These are people who work for think tanks or as lobbyists, who work as staff at the Capitol. The people who are operatives aren't necessarily like these big wigs, like they're really moving money around. Most operatives are making fewer than six figures. They're typically living between 40 and 80,000. And you don't really, quote unquote, make it and be like a big time one until you're hitting 100,000. But that's small potatoes. The guys at the top end, you're like really famously, like Karl Rove, he's making a good amount of money from his different ventures, but he's diversified. He's doing a bunch of stuff. But most folks aren't making it rich by saying, oh, I want to go and be a political operative. But political operatives look at politics, and like before I was talking about like the people who want to get elected and do something. They have a vision, they have whatever they want, they just want to be the person in charge for whatever reason, whatever. Then you have the donors, and they have their reasons. Operatives, their job is to get people elected, or to get people or keep people elected, or it's to get legislation moved or not moved, depending on what side of the issue they're on. That's kind of like the real crux of where these people live. And you have so that's important to know. That's where the operatives are. But the next one, and the second biggest group of people, is going to be the activists. And the activists are people who attend Republican women events. They actively follow and engage. They actually not just follow, but they actually participate in the conversations on social media. These are people who go and knock on doors. Not many of them do, but some of them go and knock on doors, make phone calls. That's the type of person that's an activist. They have an opinion, they have their own thoughts, and they want to go and they stay engaged pretty much year round what's going on in politics. And then the last group, and by far the largest, I would say that of the total amount that we've talked about so far, maybe takes up 25% of the pie of total people involved in the political process. The last group, and the most important group, is the voter. These are people who go to work, they raise their family, they maybe watch a YouTube video every once in a while about politics, or they maybe follow some political people on Twitter. They don't really get involved, or they may tweet, but they only do it around an election. They have their thoughts. But these are people that they go and vote. They usually vote. They don't always vote, but they usually vote. Those groups before I talked about, those are the people that always vote. Those are what we're called 4-4s in the operative world. Everyone else, these are your 3-4s and 2-4s. These are just your voters. These are just people who vote, and they have their thoughts, and they move along. And all of that to say is the operatives and the activists and the electeds and the donors have all been really agitated for the past couple months over Ken Paxton's impeachment trial. The voters have not paid a single lick of attention, because when you look at the poll numbers, you have 25% of people for the impeachment or for the conviction of Ken Paxton, something like 35% of people against it, and then you have 40% of the people who have no idea what the hell is going on, and they don't want to be bothered with a question. But that's just to say, we are at a point where we have 5 months to go to the primary. The voters, even the voters who key into a primary election, have not turned on yet. They will not turn on until after Christmas at the very earliest. Because there's a presidential election, they will probably start tuning on right after Iowa.
They're going to start tuning in middle of January. That's when they're going to start paying attention. And then I agree, once the Iowa caucus, and then that's going to be the news. And between now and then, it is a virtual lifetime between now and the primary. Like, it literally is. Anything could happen.
Literally, there will be a new life in my life. I will have a son born between now and the primary.
That is so true.
If you want the baby registry, send us an email at host@seeingredpodcast.com, and I will send it to you.
Maybe you should send that to your partner in crime because, maybe she and her husband would like to do something for you.
I'm just saying we have the baby registry.
Send it to me.
I will send it to you.
That's what I mean.
Andy, of course. Now I'm saying to our listeners, if you would like the baby registry, there's some UT onesies on there that I would love to make sure that we get.
And now
and Dallas Cowboys,
all the Aggies.
I'm just saying. I'm listen. We don't do advertising on this channel yet. We probably won't for some time. I will advertise my baby registry. Daddy needs a new crib.
Dude, here's what I have to say to you. You've asked for UT onesies. All the Aggies fans, y'all go get him the Aggies onesies too.
Oh, my father-in-law.
I'm just saying.
I'll get the year wrong, but he's a Fighting Texas Aggie Corps cadet member. Would love that. And you know what? I just want my son to be warm. Because he will be a Longhorns fan no matter what he wears when he's a baby. And he'll look cute in maroon or in Baylor green or in Texas orange. So,
there you go.
We're just happy. We're just hoping for happy, healthy, and a little giggly. We're hoping for a little giggly.
Giggly will come in a few months.
But all of that to say, that was our little ad read there.
Is that what that was?
But I don't want to just blast out the baby list. Anyways, we have 5 months now. This episode's going to come out like on the 3rd or the 4th. I'm not exactly sure what day it comes out on. But from that moment, we literally have 5 months. 5 months to primary day. It's 150 days, more or less. We have 150 days to make our arguments to the voters that really haven't heard much. This has been getting glancing blows. It seems to me like Luke Macias and Jonathan Stickland and Michael Quinn Sullivan have their ducks in a line and are ready to attack good conservative Republican House members. It does not seem to me like those House members have their ducks in a line. I'm seeing some fundraisers. I'm seeing all this other stuff. But there's no cohesive message from this group of people about what they're fighting for or why they made that vote. I see random talk about values and corruption or whatnot. They really got to get that out there. They really got to start putting their real argument out there. Dan Patrick and Ken Paxton have gone on media tours, talking to podcasts and Tucker Carlson and Fox News and Newsmax and OANN. They've been all over everything to talk about what this crazy injustice that occurred, trying to turn Ken Paxton into a martyr when in a year and a half everyone will realize he's a corrupt crook who has been selling Texas out for the past at least 2 years, but probably much longer than that. And we don't have any cohesive messaging from, these Republicans that have been doing the work and fighting the fight. And these voters that are undecided are undecided. And right now, Jonathan Stickland and Luke Macias and Michael Quinn Sullivan, via Dan Patrick and Ken Paxton, are kicking these other consultants' ass. They are wiping the floor with them when it comes to messaging, which is remarkable because their messaging is so bad. This would take a little bit of effort and a little bit of money, and you could have a full court press of actual press getting done that would at least run a counter narrative to this, at least play some defense. But we don't need to just play defense. We need to play offense. There are a number of House representatives and senators that made their votes and their position known. We need to be going after them. We don't need to be defending against this onslaught from this cabal. We need to be attacking people like Representative Tinderholt. He needs to have a primary challenger, and he needs to defend himself. He needs to spend some money. We cannot let these clients of these people sit unadulterated once they've been elected. They sit there and they just cause problems. You need to have a primary challenger for Representative Tinderholt. You need to have one for Representative Toth and Representative Brian Harrison. These people have been agitating and whatever else for the ouster of Speaker Phelan. They don't want him there. Well, he needs to spend some money against them. Like, ratchet it up.
I'm not sure I'm completely on board with everything you've just said, but here's the bottom line.
That's okay.
Here's the bottom line. Well, I just want to make that clear to people who are listening, for what it's worth.
You think we should all just come together and kind of try to stop the fight, And here's the thing. I think, generally speaking, that probably would be the best case scenario. But this group that is behind Paxton's acquittal is pushing to get more votes and pushing a fight. And I'm not going to get hit in the face and then not punch back. I'm not the kind of person that's not going to defend myself at the very least, but I think we need to be taking the fight to them. And I think if you're going to call me a rhino, I will make the case as best I can to every Republican in your district that let's put it on paper and see what's the case, right? I do not give a I will fight for the principles of limited government. I believe that there should be limited government. I'm not a libertarian. I don't believe there should be no government. I think there should be limited government. I think government should be accountable, it should be lean, and it should be effective. I don't think that all government is the worst thing that's ever happened. I think that nearly every government program has problems with it, and we should be addressing those problems. But I would respect the opinion of other conservatives for alternatives in those fields. That said, I think that limited government is the key. I'm a limited government conservative. I think that we need to value freedom and liberty in the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights. We need to these are the keys, the foundations of what conservatism is recognizing the good things that have happened and then modifying the things that don't work.
I think that's, yes. So you want to be Speaker of the House. You've got your priorities that you want to get through, and not all Republicans are going to be with you on a certain version of that bill that's one of your priorities. They're not all going to be with you. I mean, it happens. Yes, it happens. Sometimes that is, bill goes flying through, goes and gets to the Senate and goes flying through. But more often than not, you need a relationship with some of the less progressive members of the Democrat Party, in order to achieve these goals. And you can't, negotiations are just basic. And well, maybe somebody, agrees with the concept, but they don't like this thing or that thing. And you need to be able to have a conversation because, when we can get conservative principles through and bring some Dems with us because they see the good sense in it, that's a win for everybody. And that's where we should be. We should be looking for these wins. And by the way, you said you can call me a rhino. I will never call you a rhino. We have had this discussion. It will
call me a rhino all you want. You just be wrong. And people are wrong all the time. And I don't mind correcting the record.
Yeah.
I have no issue going to your meeting and calling you a rhino yourself, or just debating the issues with you as they lie.
The first rule of debate is when you call someone a name, you have lost the argument.
I think the first rule of the debate is you're not actually debating the person, you are trying to influence the people listening. So I think that's something that most people don't just ignore whenever it comes to actual debate. But
thank you all so much for joining us on this week's edition of Seeing Red. Don't forget to check us out on social media. You know where to find us on Facebook and on Twitter. We want to know if you guys want us talking about something. You want me to take off and go research something because you don't know. And hey, what does this mean? Or what do you think? Or whatever. Hit us up, hosts at seeingredpodcast.com. And I will absolutely answer you, or Garrett will answer you. You will get a very personal response from us, and we definitely want to hear from you. And if you're bored to death by something we've been talking about, let us know that too, because we just want to get better. And as I said earlier, by having these conversations with people who agree with us and disagree with us, we learn, and when we learn, we improve. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Seeing Red podcast. It's always Texas politics and beyond. We present the facts and opinions. The Seeing Red podcast with your host, Andi Turner and Garrett Fools. Thank you, and tune in next week. And please do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.